You know what? I think I finally understand the Steph Curry ruined basketball crowd. The Sacramento Kings just shot a franchise record 58 three-pointers in Oklahoma City tonight, and it's not a good thing. Sacramento blows a 20-point lead and falls 112 to 105. There's a lot of blame to pass around, and we're going to do that right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And first and foremost, that was a joke about Steph Curry ruining basketball. I don't feel that way. I don't agree with that crowd. Although tonight, I think even Steph Curry might admit that taking 58 three-pointers in a game, especially a game where you make 23-pointers and lose, especially a game where you make 23-pointers and still only shoot 34% from beyond the arc, I think maybe he'd admit to, yeah, maybe that's a little bit too much, maybe a little too many three-point shots there, Kings. We have talked all season long about Sacramento's over-reliance on the three-point shot. Right? It is feast or famine. They live or die by that three-pointer, and tonight it could not be more clear. But again, it's not just a tonight problem. The Kings first quarter scored 31 points, shoot 8 of 18 from three-point range. Second quarter scored 33 points, 6 of 13 from three-point range. And then in the second half, they completely fall apart and they cool off. 23 points on 3 of 13 three-point shooting in the third quarter, and then just 18 points in the fourth quarter on 3 of 14 three-point shooting. Only 26 points in the paint for the Kings tonight in their loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, 112 to 105, where they blew a 20-point lead. It's not the first time they've done that this season either. Two things I do not want to hear tonight. Number one, but Matt, the Kings gave up 39 points in the third quarter. So it's not on the offense, it's on the defense. They had one quarter where defensively they fell apart. The Thunder came all the way back in, actually took a lead, and all that work that the Kings put in the first half was gone. I don't want to hear that tonight. And I'll tell you why. Yes, it was a bad quarter defensively. Yes, giving up 39 points in a quarter is not good. There's no realm where the Sacramento Kings didn't do enough defensively to win this game. Their offense let them down again. I'm sorry to beat a dead horse, and I've said this over and over and over again, not just recently here on Locked On Kings, but over the course of this entire season. The emphasis on the defensive end coming into this season was necessary, and it was crystal clear. And I'm not saying, because I know this for a fact, that the Kings have dropped their offense completely and focused solely on the defensive end. In fact, I know that the Kings are still primarily working on offense over defense in practice. But it's not been good enough. Offensively, all season long, the strength of the Sacramento Kings has not been reliable. It's got to a point where I feel like I'm in the freaking twilight zone. Because I, at this point in time, am trusting the Kings' defense more than the offense. I feel like the Kings' defense right now and going into the play-in is more reliable than the offense is. Never thought I'd be able to say that. And in fact, if you had told me, Matt, this is what you're going to say, these are the exact words that you're going to be saying at the end of the season, I would tell you, oh man, the Kings must be in a great place. If the offense is as good as we know the Kings' offense was last season and is supposed to be, and the defense is more reliable, hot damn, the Kings are probably a championship contender. Oh, no. That's not the case at all. The defense has been awesome. It's gotten significantly better. It's not perfect, right? And it still has its lapses like we saw in the third quarter of tonight's game. But defensively, the Kings are doing more than enough to consistently win basketball games. And the offense is what's holding them back from winning these crucial games down the stretch where one loss can be the difference between an actual playoff spot and not just a play-in spot, but potentially a 9 or 10 spot. The Kings are at risk of dropping to 9 tonight if the Los Angeles Lakers manage to beat the Golden State Warriors. At the time of this recording, that game is going on right now. So I don't know the results of that at this time. Like, the offense just hasn't been good. So, again, the first thing I don't want to hear tonight is, what about the defense in that third quarter? Because the offense was bad. The offense was the reason why the Kings lost, not the defense, in my opinion. Number two, but Matt, the Kings are missing Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter. Again, this is not a problem that is specific to right now. This is not a problem that is specific to the Kings without those two players. Yes, they're missing a starter and their sixth man of the year. Malik Monk, a top 3 player on this roster. Is that a big absence and tough to overcome? 100%. But the Kings offensively have lived and died by the three-point shot all season long. They've shot worse from the perimeter than they have expected all season long. Now, what are they missing in Kevin Huerter? A, on paper, reliable three-point shooter who has gone through ups and downs and peaks and valleys all season long. What are they missing in Malik Monk? A player who attacks the basket, gets those paint, touch, and spray threes that Mike Brown wants. And yet still, without Malik Monk, the Kings are still managing to find a way to shoot 58 threes in a game. You know why? Because they're doing too much. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, with Monk and Huerter. Maybe on a surface level, but it's a game plan issue. The Kings are killing themselves. There was 0 attempt in the final few possessions, game tied, with like a minute and a half, like 90 seconds to go. A couple different possessions where the Kings didn't even attempt to try to attack the basket. I think they resulted in 2 contested threes. One was way too early in the shot clock by De'Aaron Fox. The other one was like a step back, completely smothered fadeaway 3 from Fox, who had a good game tonight. We'll talk about that. But the shot selection down the stretch, Fox was a part of that bad decision making. This team, like every single team, and I talked about this on a recent episode of Locked On Kings, the blueprint of how to beat Sacramento is plastered everywhere for the league to see. You pack the paint, you muddy the paint, and let the Kings shoot themselves out of a ball game. Because we have seen that the Kings are capable of going red hot, but it typically doesn't last for more than a half or sometimes even a quarter. The Kings are an inconsistent three-point shooting team, and sometimes it feels like every single other team in the league knows that, but Sacramento doesn't. Or maybe tonight we'll just shoot our way through it and live with it. I hear a lot of, hey, there's 4 games left in the regular season, now 3 games left. This is like the Kings are who they are, and I agree with that to some extent. But you can't expect to have success in the play-in and certainly not the playoffs if you're so one-track minded on the offensive end to where every team in the league knows how to beat you. Every team can match up with you because they know, okay, just pack the paint, make it difficult on the inside, and Sacramento force this Kings team to outshoot you. I would have told you coming into the season with the roster the Kings had, hey, that's a game plan that's going to work in Sacramento's favor. But consistently over the course of this year, Sacramento has played right into that defensive game plan for their opponents. They're not making it hard. They're not making teams who are gambling on opening up the perimeter. They're not making that gamble hard on a team for more than a quarter or more than a half. I'm not in the Oklahoma City Thunder locker room during halftime, but I have to imagine there was probably something along the lines of, this Kings team is not going to shoot this well over the course of the season. And you know why I feel that way? Because everybody watching that game from the Sacramento Kings perspective felt that way. Kings had that excellent first quarter shooting-wise. I was like, this isn't going to last. Then they had that excellent second quarter shooting. I was like, okay, cool. They did it for a half. They're up 20. I still don't feel good about this because I know this team. I've watched this team. Lo and behold, we were right. Because this is what this Kings team has been over and over and over again. There's so many places where I can throw the blame. So many different people, and a bunch of people are to blame for this game. But we have to start at the top. We have to start with Mike Brown, right? I love and respect Mike Brown completely. Reigning Coach of the Year, I'm not subscribing to this thought that I see in my comment section, I see on social media, fire Mike Brown, as if the Kings haven't been through a revolving door of head coaches for the last 20 freaking years. So if that's you, if that's the way you feel, I'm not trying to make you feel dumb, but it's a dumb thing to say. It's not going to happen. You're not firing Mike Brown. That being said, he is absolutely to blame for these game plan issues. the lack of second half adjustments. He knows his team better than we know this team. And we know that this is who this team is and continues to be. Blowing leads, going ice cold. They just did it against the New York Knicks earlier on in this road trip. Had a great first half shooting the basketball. Second half fell apart, lost that game. Tonight was a copy and paste situation for Sacramento. Exact same thing happened. Mike knows that. We know that. But there aren't any adjustments. And again, not having Monk and not having Herter isn't enough for me. And Mike, I listened to some of his post-game comments in his post-game press conference. He started his press conference saying, we passed up too many open looks. Mike, you shot 58 threes tonight. You shot too many threes. You scored 26 points in the paint. What the hell are we doing talking about passing up open three-point shots? Now, you might be right. Maybe they passed up some good looks that in the first half were going in that maybe would have gone in the second half had they taken them and they decided not to take them. I'm not here I don't want to hear about three-point shots that you passed up. I want to hear about how you took too many threes and why you didn't have any sort of paint presence to begin with offensively. And then on top of that, Mike starts talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander traveling down the stretch when he hit that big shot over Davion Mitchell. He's absolutely right, by the way. It was a travel. The last 2-minute report will confirm it tomorrow, and we'll still feel awful about it. He also talked about the fouls. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting to the line 20 times. The Kings as a team getting to the line 26 times. Both valid points by Mike. I'm not saying he's wrong. But again, I don't want to hear about that because that's not the story of the game. The story of the game is what you've continued to do all season long, which is shoot too many threes, live and die by the three-point shot. And for, once again, it came back to bite you in the ass at a time you just can't afford to blow 20-point leads at this point in the season with so much on the line. So I was honestly, I'll be perfectly clear with you. Again, I trust Mike Brown completely, respect the hell out of Mike Brown. I was really disappointed by those post-game comments from Mike. Really disappointed. I also don't understand his position as a head coach to where if he took the podium and go, yeah, we're shooting way too many threes, we're whatever. He doesn't want to discredit or knock off the confidence of his three-point shooters, and I get that to some extent. But if you don't want to put it on them, then put it on yourself. Take accountability. 58 three-pointers is unacceptable, especially when exactly what so many of us thought was going to happen and feared was going to happen at the end of the first half played out almost to a T. Also got to throw some blame towards Domantas Sabonis. Got some positive things to talk about, too, as much as I don't want to. De'Aaron Fox, Keon Ellis, great games from them. We'll talk about that, too. It's all coming up here in just a bit. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to go through the hiring process. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make that process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Tonight, Domantas Sabonis' record double-double streak came to an end. And to be honest with you, I'm okay with it. In fact, I think it's fitting because Domantas Sabonis played terrible. Terrible tonight. 8 points, 2 of 7 from the field, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 6 turnovers. The lack of paint presence starts with Domas, right? Because we know Domas isn't the one chucking 58 three-pointers. I don't even know if he had one tonight. It's not all on Domas, so don't mishear me. I'm not saying like, oh, the Kings only scored 26 points in the paint because Domantas Sabonis had zero interior presence. It's all on him. But again, it starts with him. Sabonis is not doing enough, especially with the injuries that the Kings are dealing with right now. Granted, those are injuries to guards, and Sabonis is a big, but Domas is not doing enough consistently to establish a paint presence for Sacramento. It killed the Kings tonight. And it's unfortunately killed the Kings a number of times here down the stretch. You know, I've talked about this before. I've championed Domas all season long. Domas, for the vast majority of this season, has been phenomenal. And he has not gotten the credit or recognition that he deserves for that. The most common criticism that I hear and see of Domantas Sabonis' game is for a big man who's being paid $40 million per year. He is not a reliable scoring option. He is not someone that you can go to that can just get you a bucket. And as much as I disagree at times with that argument, here you are in games that aren't playoff games but are as close to the playoffs as you're going to get during the regular season, and Domantas Sabonis is proving these doubters right. Because you're not getting enough scoring from Sabonis, period. And it starts with his lack of interior presence. 2 of 7 from the field. I mean, that's a terrible shooting percentage. We know that. But only 7 field goal attempts in a game. Again, I put a lot of that on the Kings' game plan, too. But Sabonis has to do more. Has to establish himself more on the interior. And again, this is coming from me, a guy that defends Domas to the ends of the earth. Right? But I recognize what's in front of Sacramento. If the Kings want any hope of even making the playoffs and making it through the play-in, Domantas Sabonis cannot be a guy that maybe gets you 12 to 15 points with a handful of buckets in the paint and grabs a billion rebounds, and you're like, yep, that was enough. Like, Sabonis has to be, without Malik Monk right now, Sabonis has to be more of a scoring threat than he has been over the last, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks. He's had nights where it's been good, moments where it's been good. He's not been terrible the entire time, don't get me wrong. But it hasn't been enough. And it is playing right into the doubt and the hate and the criticisms of the general NBA opinion or national media or whatever you want to call it towards Domas. It's playing right into that. Now, I don't know how much Domas cares about that criticism or not. At this point, it's not hurting your reputation around the league. It's hurting your team. Your team needs more from you in these spots. If you're taking too many threes and you're not establishing yourself on the inside, Domas, get to the freaking rim. And when you're at the rim, don't turn the ball over and don't miss your bunnies around the rim. Again, easy for me to say from my position. I'm not the one battling down there. And I know teams are primarily packing the paint and muddying the paint to counter Domantas Sabonis and make his life difficult. But you can't just reward them by continuing to shoot threes and not try to establish Sabonis on the inside. There was a moment in the fourth quarter, a couple plays in the fourth quarter. Harrison Barnes did not have a good game tonight. Harrison Barnes has been struggling as of late again, which sucks. Harrison came into the game at one point in the fourth quarter and back-to-back possessions tried to attack the rim. I think he got to the line one of the 2 possessions. I can't remember what happened on the first one. That's what I wanted to see more of. He was physical. He tried to establish the Kings in the paint at least a little bit. I know it's muddied. I know it's physical. I know there's a lot of defenders in the paint, but you have to do something because your three-point shooting is not reliable enough alone to force a team to change their game plan, because teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder and every team in the league is going to dare you to beat them for 4 quarters from the perimeter. And with the exception of a handful of games, the Kings have not been able to do that consistently enough to feel good about that going into the postseason. Hell, they couldn't even do that in the postseason against the Warriors last year when they were the best offense in the league during the regular season. I feel bad for harping on Domantas Sabonis because it's not all on him tonight, right? And the game plan is certainly to blame to some extent. But Domas has to be better. Your second best player, your superstar, your $40 million per year player has to be better in a crucial game where you're up by 20 points than he was tonight. There were things to be positive about. part of me feels like part of me doesn't want to be positive about it because I don't feel in a very positive mood at the moment, as you can tell, but things that are worth pointing out. Keon Ellis. I mean, Keon Ellis was sensational, especially in the first half. I mean, the Kings were sensational in general in the first half. 26 points, 8 of 15 from three-point range, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks. Like, Keon Ellis' stat line, fantastic. I don't think that Keon Ellis should be taking 15 threes in a game, by the way, which is kind of a reflection of the Kings shooting too many threes to begin with. However, I will say that teams are going to force Keon to beat them. When you get into the play-in, if you hopefully get into the playoffs, teams are going to look at Keon and are going to feel more confident leaving him on the perimeter than leaving anybody else. Hey, guy who started the season as a two-way player, beat us in the postseason. Go ahead. I like the fact that Keon is not shying away from those shots. He's taking them in rhythm, taking them with confidence, and he had a night like tonight where he's capable of hitting 8 threes in a night. Again, if I were to tell you Keon Ellis made 8 3-pointers in a game, the Kings should be winning that game, and yet they didn't, and they're not, because the offense as a whole is not reliable. Just like 8 3-pointers a game from Keon Ellis is not reliable. He's going to get a lot of these looks. You don't want him hesitating. You want him to take these looks. But I did see Keon pass up a couple of possessions where he attacked the basket. He got to the paint and chose to not take the layup or not take the shot at the rim, even if it would have been slightly contested, to try and kick out for a 3. Following the game plan. I understand spray threes. I understand what Mike Brown is trying to do and the shots that he wants to generate. But sometimes you got to take the bucket that's available to you. And there were times where Keon didn't. And I think he was being a good soldier, following the game plan. But as great as Keon Ellis was, 15 threes is too many threes from Keon. 15 threes is too many threes from pretty much anybody on this roster. Now, I will say this. I think, in a way, Keon Ellis might kind of be redemption for the Sacramento Kings and the Kings organization's mistake with Gabe Vincent. Stockton's own Gabe Vincent, by the way, Stockton, California. Gabe Vincent started his career with the Stockton Kings. Miami Heat discovered him. Miami Heat brought him over, of course, last year. He was a crucial part of the Miami Heat NBA Finals team. And then this year he went to the Los Angeles Lakers, where he's dealt with injuries and struggled and has not been the impact player that the Lakers were hoping for. But Keon Ellis' journey in many ways, and specifically his first 2 years in the league, are eerily similar to Gabe's, at least statistically. I don't know if that's a fair comparison. I don't know if that's a similar parallel. All I'm saying is this. If that trajectory continues, if Keon can be what Gabe Vincent was to the Heat and what I still think he can be to the Lakers or whatever team he ends up on after this season, if he can be that for Sacramento, talk about a freaking home run on Keegan Murray draft night when the Kings signed Keon as an undrafted free agent right after the draft ended. An absolute home run. So, I mean, I want to give Keon all the credit in the world. Again, I have an issue with 15 3-point attempts. I don't blame Keon for that. Again, I blame the game plan. Keon was fantastic tonight, and I like the fact that he seems fearless with taking the shots that the defense is willing to give him and is going to continue to give him come postseason. Then there's De'Aaron Fox. So much about De'Aaron Fox's game was great, right? Star versus star. Fox versus SGA. Both of them going at it. Fox, 33 points tonight, red hot to start this game. Of course, he was red hot from three-point range. 12 of 29 from the field, 7 of 17 from three-point range for De'Aaron Fox. Also 8 rebounds, 6 assists, a couple of steals. A great game from De'Aaron in a lot of ways. I wish I could just stop there, or I wish I could spend more time on that. However, his shot selection down the stretch was horrible. And part of the Kings' problem. If we're going to blame Domantas Sabonis in some ways for, hey, the lack of paint presence starts with you, certainly a lack of paint presence also falls on the shoulders of De'Aaron Fox, who is established himself as an NBA player by getting downhill, attacking the rim, and finishing around the rim. But on top of that, too, like De'Aaron, if your team has an over-reliance on three-point shots, even if you were red hot from three-point range in the first half, and he hit some big threes in the second half as well, but like I can't get those possessions out of my head where 90 seconds or less remaining in the game tied or Kings down only by a couple of points, Fox didn't even attempt to attack the basket in 2 back-to-back possessions. Like, that's on Fox. As great of a game as he had. Like, that starts with you, leader. Again, I'm not saying the game plan is on you. I'm also not saying that you weren't following the game plan by taking those shots. Maybe you were, which speaks to the bigger problem. I want to focus on the positives for De'Aaron. But that shot selection down the stretch was too rough not to mention. On top of that, too, the Fox versus SGA comparisons, we've been doing that his entire career. And SGA's entire career. 2 very similar players in so many ways, right? Stars of their respective teams, 2 players that are at the top of the league in steals, right? SGA gets a lot more credit as a defender than De'Aaron Fox does. SGA is also averaging 30 points per game and is an MVP candidate, and Fox is not. And I think that's rightfully so at this point. That being said, SGA gets a way better whistle than Fox does. It's not debatable, right? They're similar in so many ways except for how they're officiated. SGA got to the line 20 times tonight. De'Aaron Fox got to the line 4 times. SGA is a master of the snap your head back move to bait and draw fouls. De'Aaron Fox, maybe he should start doing that. I don't know. He does not get those foul calls. That being said, I'm not making an excuse here because while I do think De'Aaron Fox should have gotten to the line much more than 4 times, and I do think SGA foul baits to get to the line 20 times, SGA also attacks the basket. So there's a reason why he gets a better whistle on average than De'Aaron does, in addition to being more of a star, I guess, or an established star in the league than De'Aaron is. SGA is number 1 in the league in drives. Leads the league in drives. De'Aaron Fox is 12th. On top of that, Shai shoots 44% of Shai's field goal attempts, and this was coming into tonight, by the way. 44% of Shai's field goal attempts are from within 10 feet. Fox's are only 37%. I love that De'Aaron has added that three-point shot to his game. It's awesome because he came into the league and it did not exist. The addition of De'Aaron Fox's three-point shot makes him virtually unguardable, but it's also caused him to go away from some of what made him great to begin with, which is attacking the basket and getting to the inside. So I get SGA gets a better whistle than Fox does, and Fox does not deserve to have as worse of a whistle as he has compared to Shai. But Shai attacks the basket. Shai gets to the rim. Shai gets to his spots. I know De'Aaron feels like he can all the time, but on nights like tonight, he didn't. Took too many threes, just like the Kings took too many threes. And lo and behold, they lost because of it. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time, which is now the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantees, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Now, Game Time is also great for buying your Sacramento Kings tickets. Game Time is great for buying concert tickets, local comedy shows, theatrical productions, big stadium events like football games or stadium concerts, right? You can get all your tickets on Game Time. But I have firsthand experienced how amazing of a deal you can get buying MLB tickets on Game Time. I did it during the playoffs last year in San Francisco on an off night where the Kings and Warriors weren't playing between games 3 and games 4. I decided, hey, I'm going to go watch the Giants game. I got like, for 25 or 30 bucks, I sat like 15 rows up from the field in the lower level behind the Giants dugout. Amazing seats that were like 40% less. I paid 40% less than what their actual market value is because I bought them just an hour or so before the game started. There's so many great things, priority, last-minute deals, flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantees. Game Time is your number 1 place to go for not just your MLB tickets, but just your tickets in general. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed, and use our promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I had a podcast a couple episodes ago, where I titled it, "The Sacramento Kings Are a Play-In Team." That was the night that I pretty much came to the realization or the acceptance that I don't think the Kings are finishing in the 6th seed. Even though it's still mathematically possible, I don't think the Kings are finishing the 6th seed. I think at this point, in my opinion, the Kings, while they're playing to try and get home court advantage in that 7th seed in the first round of the play-in, or the first game of the play-in, to me, the Kings' primary responsibility for the final 3 games of this season, including back-to-back games against the Pelicans and Suns that are right ahead of you in the standings, both teams playing tonight, currently playing right now. I don't know what the scores are of those games. I don't know what the result is going to be. Last I checked, the Clippers were up on Phoenix. So I don't know how the standings is going to shake out at the end of tonight, at least at the time of this recording. I know those are huge games. I know they could have, winning those games could vault the Kings up to 7th or to 6th. To me, what's most important for Sacramento right now simply is just holding on to 8th. Dropping down to 9th or 10th would be horrible for this team. And I've gone over before the difference of 7 and 8 versus 9, 10. I'll summarize it really quickly. 7 and 8, you only have to win once and you're in. You have a chance to actually secure the 7th seed in the playoffs. 9 or 10, you have to win twice just to get the 8th seed. And if you lose once, you're done. Right? So significant advantage to being 7 or 8 than 9 or 10. So if the Kings are playing to tread water at this point, that should be their focus. At least in my opinion. That's more important. To me, it's more important for the Kings to secure 8 and avoid 9 than move up to 7 or even 6. Just based off of how I'm reading this team at this point in time. Because the Kings are entering the play-in tournament without Malik Monk, without Kevin Huerter, and without their primary strength being reliable. The Kings' offense is not reliable at this point in time. Really hasn't been reliable for much of this season. That's going to be a problem for the Kings to address and dive deep into this offseason when they're deciding which players to keep, which players to move on from, how they're going to re-sign Malik Monk, what players to bring in here. Right? That's all going to be stuff that we're going to talk about in great deal this summer. For right now, this is what you are. No Monk, no Huerter. Offense is inconsistent and unreliable. Your defense is playing good enough to where your unreliable offense is not killing you every single night, and I expect that defense to translate into the postseason because it's been really good for around a month now. Maybe even over a month. So I expect that to continue, and that's certainly a positive. But I mean, at this point, I don't necessarily like the Kings' chances of securing a playoff spot if they can't find a way offensively to beat a team with a game plan that goes beyond just make threes. Because that's what I feel like the Kings are doing right now. Again, Thursday versus Pelicans, Friday versus the Suns. Huge games inside the Golden One Center. Kings kind of need to win out. I mean, they absolutely need to win out at this point, those 2 games, and then beating Portland in the final game of the season this Sunday. They need to win all 3 games if they want any shot at the 6th seed, and even that might not be enough. They need to win 2 out of the 3 of these games, if nothing else, than to avoid falling to 9. So, I mean, we're all buckled in and we're on the ride. Even if we want to get off, at this point, we're all committed. It might be a crash landing to end this season. We'll see how it wraps up. No matter what happens, of course, we'll keep you covered right here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Appreciate your support as always. You want to share your thoughts on the 3-point shooting, tonight's game, how you're feeling going into the play-in, anything. Share it with me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Hit me up, MattGeorgeSports@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, I know you're already getting loose in the comment section down below. Appreciate you. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.